Let's begin now.
Welcome back, everybody, to the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. I'm your host, Drew, going this evening with access to preview the Farmers Insurance Open down in Southern California, San Diego. Got a nice star-studded field for the first time this year. Plenty of big names. Obviously, Tiger's probably headlining this. Rory's back in the field this week. Really going to be a fun event to try to kind of break down, I guess, from a salary standpoint, with it being a little bit tougher from the top range, where it seems like everyone has some type of win equity in navigating through it. Again, we get 2-course rotation. We have the Torrey Pines South and Torrey Pines North, so I have access along to break both of those down, try to give you an idea how to strategize this week. I don't think you should overthink it. It's not like last week with the different 3-course rotation. With guys just playing the North course once, it's not as drastic. So I'll go ahead and bring in Axis. I know he's been traveling from the freezing cold Florida weather to the mildly colder Michigan weather.
Yep, finally on vacation in Michigan. Nice beaches. Yeah, nice. I mean, there might not be white sand, but there's white all over the beaches here. About 10 inches of it. So
fun stuff.
It is. Yeah, it's glorious to be back. I mean, nobody ever likes to be golfing on a Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. I mean, who would want to do that? But I'm back and ready for the first, I guess you can call it, real event of the year. At least the first deep event of the year on the PGA side. We had a pretty deep event on the Euro side last week. But yeah, it'd be nice to turn this one on, and they'll be able to switch back and forth between some of the bigger names here, and it won't be just Ricky or watching Finau screw up your showdown lineups for you. So I'm excited for, and I like this course. Obviously, who doesn't? Torrey Pines. So
no, it's a sweet golf course. Like, it's one of the, I don't even think it's underrated anymore. But as far as like the California courses go, Torrey is definitely one of the more scenic ones that doesn't get a bunch of praise. So it's cool to see a pretty solid field this week. Got actually a pretty good rotation of tournaments coming up. So this pretty much kicks off a very busy spring up until the Masters. Then even that doesn't really slow down. So we can go ahead and dive in, man. We don't have to recap the American Express. Landry won that thing. Scheffler Chalk basically pulled through until the end. But we weren't able to do a recap pod this week with Axis traveling through the snowy tundra. But we will probably continue that this Sunday. So again, continue to send in your questions. We got a pretty good bank of them now. But again, if you DM me or Axis, golf questions, DFS questions, betting, anything under the sun, you can send those our way, and we will answer that on the recap podcast. Again, that's a separate podcast from this DFS preview. Kind of segments it twice in 1 week to give you some content on both Monday and then Tuesday for the tournament. So let's go ahead and look at the golf course, Axis. We'll dive in. Like I said, it's 2 different events, or 2 different courses for the event. Torrey Pines South and Torrey Pines North. South is going to be played Thursday or Friday, depending on the tee times for the player, and then all weekend long. So Saturday, Sunday will be the South course. It's a beast. It's 7,700 yards, just south of 7,700 yards. The North course is no picnic. It's 7,300 yards, but it does play almost 2 shots easier than the South course. Looking at some data that we have on the 2 courses, driving distance is pretty close, between 285 and 292. Green regulation on the North course is a lot higher, so that's probably your biggest draw. And I'm mentioning the North course just as a note, honestly, for me, and we can talk about this real quick, Axis, before I finish up the course stuff. Are you just primarily focusing on the South, I'm guessing, this week?
Yep. Yeah, I really don't look at anything on the North at all, since they have to play both anyway. It's the slightly easier course. So I just try to focus on it. Plus, we have all the data for the South one, so.
Yeah, exactly. No strokes gained on the North. Okay, we can do that. If you guys do want to see the data for both, you can go to fantasygolfbag.com/podcast. And that's listed for the course profile and data, and that's completely free for all the podcast listeners. But I'll run down the course details for the South Course. The green is going to be covered with Poa. I think that's probably the biggest difference this week versus most of the weeks on tour. You'll see some guys talk about their good putting on Poa. Does make a little bit of a difference. I mean, guys that have been comfortable in Bermuda, obviously bent. Poa is just a different animal. It's a little bit more bumpy. It can be a little bit quicker if it gets dried out, but usually it's just bumpy, and some guys have a tough time managing that. It's just frustrating. You guys, I mean, you see Brant Snedeker has had a great history here, and he gets touted as a win player, but man, he's a good Poa putter. The poppy stroke really helps roll it on top of this stuff. But I'll go down the list again. Scoring average for the South, 71.73. So basically even par is the scoring average. Driving accuracy at 53%. Driving distance, 292. Green regulation, 65%. So kind of lower on tour. But I mean, it's understandable, right? It's 7,700 yards. Guys are having to hit driver. They're going to have longer irons in if they hit the fairway. If they hit in the rough, it's a tougher shot out of the rough, obviously. So 65% green regulation. That'll be a key stat this week. Proximity average is about 35 feet. Again, kind of goes hand in hand with the distance of the course. And then the average approach shot is 173. And I think, Axis, you had some more details on that.
Yeah, so pertaining to the South Course, I know you mentioned the rough. So really quick, I ran the numbers on that, and it's actually kind of average compared to this I guess, tour average from the rough. So basically, Torrey Pines South is just difficult from the fairway and the rough. And although obviously it's always more penal to be in the rough, it wasn't actually as much as I thought it would be when I went to run the numbers. And I think that's just because it's difficult from the fairway as well. So it's not as skewed much, where on easy courses is actually where I see the biggest discrepancy in penalizing rough, because on the easy courses, guys are scoring so well from the fairway that it skews it. So interesting there. But yeah, definitely mid to long irons all up and down Torrey Pines South. Most golfers are going to average a minimum of 10 plus shots from 150 to 200, 220-ish range. That includes par threes, and then going to have a handful more right around 150. So definitely going to need to bring out the mid to long irons. So you're talking guys like Morikawa, Rose, Griot, Rory, Kokrak. I know Leishman's pretty solid from that area as well. Matt Every, who's done well here in the past as well. So played well here, especially compared to his baseline. Mm-hmm. So, guys like that, and that data's from last season for the most part as well. So I already mentioned the POA, and then I am going to focus mainly on irons, though. I know this is a very long course, but guys haven't really necessarily built the best rounds here off of that, like you do at a Quail Hollow. It's mainly been through the iron play, so that's where in the ball striking realm, obviously you still want to be an okay drive. That doesn't mean ignore driving, but we talk about the ball striking spectrum. Some weeks we weight 60-40 of the ball striking towards off the tee. This week it's going to be more, for me anyway, it'd be more like a 30-70 split from off the tee to approach. So it's kind of where I'm looking this week, trying to break down some course fit for the South Course.
Yeah, I think approach is always pretty high up, obviously, but it is, so in my mind, looking at the last couple events, this is the first real tournament that I give a pretty big bump to off the tee versus approach, just relative to where approach has been to start the season. Obviously, Kapalua, people talk about off the tee, but we saw approach was the trend there. Sony with the win, approach again, and then last week we saw approach being pretty key, especially across three courses with two of them with no strokes gain data. So this one, just being at the distance, I think off the tee, it will help me weigh out some of the top names as well. You talk about Rory. You look at Rory. You look at Xander, you look at John Rahm. Those are some of the guys that you'll be looking to, obviously with a good balance of approach, but off the tee is weighted a little bit higher this week versus the last couple. So I think the last few things, we kind of talked about it before the show. I think bogey avoidance is important this week. It's obviously not going to be as low scoring as we've seen the couple weeks on tour. Justin Rose was one of the lowest scores we've seen in a long time last year. He shot 21 under. But the years prior to that was Jason Day at -10, John Rahm -13, Snedeker -6, Jason Day -9, and then Scott Stallings -9. And actually, lo and behold, Tiger Woods 2013 -14. So I think the scoring will be a little bit lower. So again, due to the length of the golf course, looking at bogey avoidance is key. I think you'll hear people talk about par 5 scoring, but again, when you look at how the course sets up and how guys leading into this event have played, par 5 scoring really isn't a predictable stat. So just looking at some of the key metrics that we talked about, that's probably where I'm going to go. And then looking at some bogey avoidance and then weighing that against their birdies, probably the last 6 months or so, that'll probably give me the best determination of who's really rosterable for me.
Yeah, we'll be pretty similar. I'm going to weigh off the tee a little less than you, and I'm going to bump that to the irons just a bit more. But I'll definitely leaning heavily, as always. Like sometimes I feel like an idiot just continuing to talk about looking at approach and ball striking and all that. Like, I don't know. Obviously, that's not unique. You should do that every week. But I think this week, I just like to go over how I'm going to skew it a little bit more. So
I think that's a reoccurring theme, obviously. And that's probably most people, if they've been playing PGA DFS, they'll see like, the strokes gain approach is pretty reliable week to week. And then off the tee tends to be the flattest stat over the course of a season. Like guys don't fluctuate too much. But I will say like this type of event, if you want to compare, this isn't a putting contest to me. Last week was the putting contest. This is definitely more of a ball striking is going to win out for me in my model. If some guy's been struggling with his irons or his driver, but he's been putting well, this isn't the week for me to go chase that. That was last week. So just to kind of, like you said, we beat a dead horse every week as far as strokes gain approach and off the tee because those are two very key stats for pretty much every single tournament. But to kind of go full circle, when we talk about not looking somewhere else, this would be the week where I really am strict on just guys that have been playing well tee to green.
Yeah, no, I totally agree.
Alrighty, let's so obviously a big field and pretty strong up top. So we got 5 guys, 10K and up, and then we got I think 7 guys in the 9K range. Might be 8. Yeah, 7 guys. So we'll go ahead and start in the 10K range. If you just give me like 1 or 2 guys you're really targeting, because I think all of them really have pretty good win equity. I don't know where Tiger's game's at. He obviously finished the year off really well, having been a winner here, and he's shooting for 83 wins to break Sam Snead's record. I think there's a lot going for him. But, man, John Rahm's been playing great for a while. I think Rory will get some ownership. It's probably going to be tough to get one of the 11K guys in there. I would probably lean Rahm, to be honest. I mean, he's 1 year before in 2017. But I feel like his game on this type of golf course with he's fantastic driver. I think him and Rory both are. But I do like Rahm's game coming in here. There's been a little bit more history of late for Rahm. That's probably where I'll go in the high range. And then the low side, Xander's really tough for me because he is a guy I always overlook. And he came into this event last year with 3 straight miscuts. He's actually a really good POA putter. So if you run POA numbers on him versus the field, he's actually positive. So those are probably the 2 guys that I'm looking at right now. It's Rahm and Xander. Don't have any, like I said, I think they all have some win equity. Not really against Tiger or Rory, but it's going to be very tough to make a full-blown decision on one of these guys because they're all going to look pretty good.
Yeah, Tiger should have some motivation too. He's got a catch old Westy over there winning for the 4th decade, I think, getting that win over in Abu Dhabi. So Tiger's got to play catch up and get a win this decade so he can join him. But I have no worry about Tiger. That's not to say I'm necessarily going to roster him. I'm not worried about it. The off the tee is a little lacking, but the irons are back to elite world status. So not overly worried there. Rory is the best golfer in the field for me. I would roster him over Jon Rahm. That could be a mistake. I don't know. But that's where I'm leaning of the 11K guys. I don't know if I can get there. Obviously in GPPs you can get anywhere if you want to. Single entry, I don't think I don't know. Like you said, maybe Xander. I could get to Xander in a single entry. No problem. I think there's enough to build with in the lower ranges there. I don't really have any problem with any of these guys in particular. Rose would be my least favorite.
Yeah, I agree with that.
But I could sit here and make a case for all of them. However, so if you're going to make me rank them, I'll say of the upper, we'll go Rory and Xander for me.
Yeah, what's funny is just kind of rattle off the comparison with Rory and Rahm from last year. Both finished fifth. They 3.5, 3.7 strokes gained off the tee. They both had 2 eagles, 15 and 16 birdies, respectively. I think the big difference was fairways. Jon Rahm hit 66% of fairways and 72% of greens, and Rory hit 55% of fairways, 68% of greens. Not to say last year's results will kind of transpire this week, but when you see Rahm has had his consistent role here, especially with his win in 2017, but hitting a lot of fairways and a lot of greens at his price, that's kind of a tiebreaker for me. So, but yeah, like I said, same as you. It's really hard to count any one of these guys out, but Rose would be the least loved by me in this range. I don't think there's anything wrong with starting in the 9K range. So if you're ready, we can go ahead and hop down there. Because I think even through the 8K range, guys have enough win equity through the 8K range. It obviously drops off a little bit from the 10K range, but the 9K is not bad. I mean, you got Woodland in there, Fowler from last week, who's never really had a great showing here. Tony Finau's had some good results, and his form looks to be coming back. We'll see how it goes this week. Sung J M, Patrick Reed. Who do you like in this tier? You think you could start a single entry in this range? I think this would probably be a good starting point from a balanced build if you're going that way.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was actually strange for me that Ricky played last week, because he normally doesn't play that event leading into this one, and yeah, he hasn't been good, and there's been a lot of speculation on if that's because he has a lot of obligations to farmers during this week, yada yada yada. I don't know. Perhaps the course just doesn't suit him. I don't really think he's a particularly great long iron player. I don't know, but he normally also doesn't play leading into it, and he's going to be playing after it too with Waste Management, so that'll be 3 straight weeks.
And it's weird because he's a California guy. You would think,
yeah.
I mean, people kind of bucket it all the time, though. He's from California. He's going to play good. But yeah, you're right. He's only had a couple top tens, and it was quite a while ago when he first got on tour. It's just it's been somewhat of a struggle for him.
Maybe it is the distraction. I honestly can't say. I try not to look into that. I just know that he hasn't played that well here, and he's a very good golfer, so maybe that's just a stay away. I don't know. I think Patrick Reed is kind of underpriced here, although the irons are of a concern to me. I do just his overall play. He finds a way to get it done. I mean, we saw it in Tournament of Champions. If the game's not there, he has the short game to get him there, and you can, can't always count on it to get 7 strokes gained putting, obviously, but he was positive approach in that wind fest at Sony. So I think you can safely go back to Patrick Reed this week, although the irons are maybe a slight concern. I assume Gary Woodland, with his course history here, will be extremely popular, which is, I think he might be the worst at bogey avoidance in this range over the last year, but still not bad. He's still 80th percentile in the field, so it's not like he's making some astronomical more amount of bogeys than the rest of these guys in this range. It might be 1 or 2, and that's what keeps him from winning typically. But he's surprisingly enough, he's worse than Finau at that. But M at 9.1. I mean, this will be this will be a tough range for me to separate. Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what I'm going to do in this range yet at all. I think Reed's underpriced though, so he could find his way into some lineups, especially in GPPs. And then I don't know. I mean, I could skip down and go because
Well, I'll just go ahead. It's fairly easy for me in the 9K range. Like I think Ricky is an easy skip for me. Hideki's interesting, I guess. That would be the one lower owned guy just because of where Woodland's at. But I like Woodland a ton. So literally it would just be a kind of a pivot, I guess, up to Hideki. Been playing better than he was earlier in the year, like middle of last season, I should say. And good finishes here. 33rd, 12th, 3rd the last 3 years here. Finau, I'm interested to go back to. He didn't gain a ton of strokes on approach last week, so I know guys were interested to see how he would play. He was a decision for me up top between like Sungjae, him, should I go Ricky, and like in single entry. And I ended up only getting enough salary for Finau, and he started off all right. I mean, obviously his 10 under round 2 helped, but he didn't gain a ton of strokes on approach. He gained two green regulation versus the field, which is fine. So I'm willing to go there. Like he has decent course history, 3 top 15s his last 3 years. But I do think this is a decent golf course for him with his driver, his irons. So we'll see if that rides out. I'm not really interested in Patrick Reed this week as far as like you said, his irons are his weakness. And that's just something I want to avoid. And then Sungjae, it's hard to get away from. So for me, it's really Woodland, a little bit of Finau with Sungjae, and then Hideki probably in the 20 max or larger field GPP. So just kind of want to wrap a bow around that because for me it's a little bit easier just to cross out a few. It's
yeah, I can get to Finau.
Yeah, he's got a lot of. Wouldn't say he has a ton of upside. Well. Yeah, he is a very good long iron player. But yeah, let's go ahead and hop down into the 8K range. There's a little bit more uncertainty, I guess, with guys that look great. Talking about Morikawa and Scheffler, guys that are coming in with good form. We all have high praise for them. I mean, I'm gonna be playing both of them, but any particular guys stand out to you in this 8K range? Is this obviously Neiman had some hype last year. Snedeker loves this place. Matthew Wolff kind of let us down last week, so this range gets a little bit tougher for me when you get outside of Morikawa and Scheffler. It's the bottom range is almost like a skip for me. I'm not sure if you can sell me on anybody.
Probably not, but maybe. Morikawa is probably my favorite of the range. He continues to play well. He excels. He has excelled so far in what we've seen of him on tour from these key ranges. And I believe I talked about it at the Sony. A lot of people look at that course being shorter, but there's actually a lot of long irons there too. And though he stumbled down the stretch, he still played fairly well that week, all things considered, and played well in that hurricane. So, I mean, there's something said there. 8,900 definitely will be back in on Morikawa this week. Scheffler, yeah, he can play anywhere, so I have no problem getting Scheffler into lineups this week as well. I have nothing else to say about that. Yeah, he's just
Scheffler's good. He's long. Golfer. I mean, I think Morikawa is really good, and I don't even think Scheffler was in the conversation when it was Morikawa, Hovland, Wolff. But I will say Scheffler, as far as a game for this type of golf course, hits it extremely high. He's very long. Like, this would be a great course for him. Morikawa, I think he's fine here, but like honestly, I would be willing to bet a head-to-head that Scheffler outplays Morikawa this week, and it's not off of last week's form because Morikawa's been playing fine for a while. But if you look at the course setup, Scheffler, I think, is more prototypical of a Rory McIlroy. High, hits it really long. I would go there. I know you're not asking for who should I decide between the two, but when I was looking through my numbers, I want both, but Scheffler definitely is a keep riding it. I'm not sure if he could flame out anytime soon for me.
No, my tiebreak between I'd use them both. The tiebreak, if you made me choose one, would be Morikawa, just based on his long irons have been elite since he's been on tour. So that would be
all of his irons have been.
Yeah, he excels especially at the 150 to 200 range. Scheffler not so much, but I've a lot less on him, so I'm not writing him off saying he can't do that. So it's a coin flip at best for me.
Play them both.
Yeah, I lean.
Both
yeah,
finish
and
top
you could
10,
start,
man. You're golden.
You could start a single entry, both of them, and be golden.
I mean, they could both realistically finish top 10. I mean,
yeah, and you
I'm
have
trying to
Neiman's,
overhype them, but shit.
right? You have Neiman's narrative of winning here twice as an AM, I believe.
Yeah, back in the freaking World Juniors,
So,
like
obviously that means he's outstanding and can beat all PGA Tour fields here. No, although he's good enough now where he could win this event, but
he could.
That's not why you should like him. That narrative popped up in last year too. Like, come on, Anyway, just
move on.
We're gonna skip Jordan Spieth. We're gonna skip Snedeker for me. Leishman, I talked about his long irons, and I think Billy Horschel's underpriced too, and he bit me real hard last week. He was my only miscut in my single entry and cash lineups. But I will go back. I spoke about this on a pod. I try 4 rounds. Like I'm projecting out more than that because projecting 4 is damn near impossible. So I'm willing to go back. I don't know if I will. I do think he's slightly underpriced though. So he could find his way into my lineup if I have around this much salary left.
Okay. Let's see. I really don't think there's anybody left.
No, I kind of just ran through the entire 8K.
No, not left for you to talk about. Left for me to talk about. Yeah, I think we can move on. Yeah, we can move on down the list. So going into the 7K range, Molinari was fantastically terrible last week, which was fun. Everyone's shooting 30 under par. He shoots basically even par. Very good player. Great. Lanto Griffin, 7,900. I think he's going to be another guy to go back to for me. Really, man, he's one of those that I'm not like super excited about for the season long stuff. When you talk about longer term form, he was a guy that I thought like popped at the Houston Open, maybe had 1 or 2 good weeks. He played poorly at the Tournament of Champions or the Sony
RSM.
It was the RSM, and then he played back again at the Sony.
Sony finished 7th.
Yeah. So I think after the RSM, I was like, all right, there you go. There's his time, and we can write him off if he gets popular. Great, we can just avoid it. And played well at the Sony, so he grades out extremely well. He's very good with par 5 scoring. Obviously, relative to the field in 2020, he's been gaining the most strokes, or he's in top 10 in strokes gained against the field. And he is ranked 20th in birdie or better in this field for the last 6 months. So I think he's probably going to be somewhat in play for me. I don't know about his long irons. I don't know if you have his longer iron data pulled up. It seems like he hits a high fade, and that would work out pretty well here. Similar to John Rahm, but I don't want to put you on the spot.
That's Lanto?
Yeah.
Lanto. We have Lanto. I have him slightly above average.
Okay.
So not negative.
That's pretty good for him, though. I mean, he's just been on tour for a year. Emiliano Grillo, I think we can go back to obviously a decent showing at the Sony, finished 21st, and he's got a 12th here 2 years ago. So I like that. Going down a little bit further, I think Ben On is underpriced, if you could say his name. So I'm sure Hatchman will appreciate that. But I mean, he was just 10K last week.
Cut as well.
I mean, you look at his ball striking numbers though. He is probably what you want. Like I said, it's not a putting contest for me this week.
No.
And he's only played here once, and it was several years ago. Finished 49.
Numbers are probably skewed too if you're looking at short-term data, because he hasn't been that great in his recent events that have had ShotLink, but he played extremely well over in the Asian swing where they don't have it. So just keep that in mind.
Yeah. So I do like Ben On. I think he's underpriced. Kokrak, I'll let you talk about him. Is he still in play for you? Then as we go down the list, we'll talk about the low 7Ks.
So I did highlight Kokrak based off of just his long irons. So I go and highlight those guys each week, and then I just go check out how they've been playing. And last year he was pretty consistent. I was pretty behind on him, obviously, and for the better part of the year. But I mean, he's 91st percentile tee to green in this field, and that's going back to last year. Very good off the tee, been very good with his irons, and particularly in this range. He missed the cut last week as well. I don't know. He sucked around the green, but other than that, it had been a pretty good stretch of, random T25s. Obviously, he has his troubles winning and closing, but 7,700. I'm asking you to please get inside, the top 30, make a shitload of birdies for me. So yeah, I could definitely get back to Kokrak this week. The rest of this range, I don't know. I think I could go a lot of different ways here. I mean, do you want to see what sucks about Knox is he's just not quite good enough off the tee for here. Like I talked earlier, you don't need to be striping it, but I just don't know if he's long enough to
Well, that's
play
the thing.
here.
He's probably accurate enough to hit a bunch of fairways, but he's not long enough to really take advantage and have less than a freaking 3-iron.
He's going to have a lot of long irons, yeah. Like that would be my concern but he's a good
here's the
long-iron
other
player.
Here's the other issue with him too. Like on this type of course, it's a long golf course, but a lot of the greens are raised or they're guarded by some type of bunker up front. And you can't be like, he's a very good ball striker, but when you look at the greens that are set up this way, he's going to struggle by getting it really close. Like I said, the average proximity is 35 feet on this golf course. Dude, he's going to, if he averages 35 feet for this golf course for the week, he'll finish like top 20, which would be fantastic, but there's no shot. I mean, that's really asking a lot.
What concerns me with him is he's played here enough. Now, he's played here the last 2 years. He gained a shitload of strokes on approach. He couldn't.
He had so far in.
You can write that off. Well, like I said, he is a good long iron hitter, but he got 43rd and 30th. So even hitting it very well, he's just not
going to get close enough to. He's not long enough to take advantage of the par fives. It's just a lot going against him.
Which sucks because he is striping it right now.
He really is. So it's almost like when you look through the range around him, I would think there's more opportunity for Ben On, Emiliano Grillo, Kokrak. Even Bud Cauley played extremely well the last 2 weeks. So he's just a guy that's in a zone that I don't love.
Back on Keegan this week too.
Keegan is interesting, to be honest. So
yeah, I could, single entry. I'm not sure, but I'd roll Keegan into GPP lineups for sure. He'd make the player pool.
All right, we can go down to the low 7K range. Matt Jones is back in play. Ugh.
Oh yes, yeah. I mean, again, for his price, solid tee to green, good enough to above average out off the tee, and the irons are right there as well. So I mean, in this range, it's hard to find a guy who was more consistent last year in that. Maybe Lucas Glover. That'd be about it, but that's always scary too. So.
Well, who else do you like in this bottom tier? And then we'll touch on the 6K range and get everyone out of here to go enjoy their lineup building. But I mean, Rory 17 has been consistent.
Maybe Fratelli. I mean, yeah. So Sabs also putts pretty well on POA compared to normal as well. So yeah, he could. Yeah.
You played Sebastian last week. I know he did pretty well in our EAP data. Like, it looks pretty green across the board, but his green regulation number bothers me. On a course like that, where green regulation probably should have been a bit higher for a guy that hit it as close as he did for the most part. So going to a course like this, I mean, I think he's a good enough player and he bombs it that this is a course he could take advantage of, but it's definitely not going to make a single entry. Is he in your single entry pool as of now, or is he more of a GPP play?
Nope, he'll be back. He'll be back single entry. He's just continuing to play well enough. I think I've used him in my cash lineup all 3 tournaments of 2020. 2 out of the 3 were successful, but like I said earlier with Horschel, I tried to block out the 4 rounds unless you just see something that's just completely out of the ordinary. But like I said, it's really hard to project 4 rounds of golf. I'm trying to project a little more and catch a guy in that heat pocket, and I accept that, especially for these type of guys. I'm gonna eat a miscut here and there. Nobody in this range is really that consistent. So as far as in my consistency rankings, he is shown some of the more upside. So I like Munoz again this week for sure.
He's been really impressive, to be honest. I mean, I actually am rooting for him when I play him. Like there's very few on tour where you're just rostering him for the sake of putting him in a DFS lineup. But he's one of the few.
Right.
Like at the RSM, he was coming down the stretch. I don't even think I had him, but I was like, this is actually really fun to watch, man. He's blowing driver past Webb. Webb's hitting 3-wood to stay safe, and this guy's trying to drive greens from like 340. I'm like, this is what I want to see.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I got no problem with that.
No. All right, so kind of to cap off this low end, I guess Tringali is probably still in play. Cameron Davis snuck in on the cut last week, but his irons actually have been pretty good of late. I don't mind going back to that. And then at the bottom range, it's probably it. I'm not really interested in going back to a Brendan Steele, and probably move down into the 6K range where I'm sure Sepp Straka will be the uttermost popular.
Yeah, for good reason. Obviously, I think he finished 13th here last year. He just played extremely well. The irons are there. He hits it well from distance with those irons. It is going to be scary chalk week for Sepp Straka at $6,900. Like I know he's 7K, but you could almost step up. Johnny Vegas actually he rates out pretty well in the upside because obviously he has a very large downside as well. But I just wanted to throw his name out there. But yeah, Sepp Straka definitely has some of the higher upside in this range for me. It's going to be hard to fade completely in GPPs. I don't know what I would, but man, and again, I say chalk. I don't know exactly what his ownership will be, but it's going to be up there, right? I mean,
I think so. It's
in this range, he'll by far be the most popular golfer. That's fair, but
yep. So looking
other
down
than that, I don't know.
I mean, I'll give you one that I'm interested in just going back to the well on.
Who's that?
Grayson Murray. I'll give it a shot. Different type of style. Obviously, he's more volatile for the birdies, but when we look at some of the data from last week, obviously only 2 rounds of strokes gained data, he really did play pretty well with his iron. So I don't know. He's had issues with injuries in the past, but at 6,800 for him, I feel like he has the upside to maybe carry forward off of a disappointing week, if you can say that for him after having the first round lead or tied. We can go into that. And then the mid-range, man, Neesmith's been playing extremely well with his irons. Charlie Hoffman's been playing extremely well with his irons. So there's actually some decent values I think you can gravitate to. Again, if you guys want to view the EAP data, that is loaded up on the website, obviously at fantasygolfbag.com/tools, and you can find the rolling stats in the EAP data. But like Neesmith's been on the list since the Sony. He actually was popping through the RSM and then appeared at the Sony, appeared last week, gaining 1.3 against the field, strokes gained approach, hitting almost over 27% of his shots inside of 12 feet last week. Same with Charlie Hoffman, similar situation, 28% of his birdie looks inside of 12 feet. So those are a couple guys in the value range that I think you can gravitate to this week.
Yeah, for sure. Neesmith rates out very well, consistency-wise as well. Again, that's only 30 rounds I have pulled for him. Been lacking a bit of the upside, but it's good to see that he hasn't been flaming out all that much. So, yeah, you could probably go down here. I haven't really been dipping into the 6Ks all that much so far.
This would probably be the first week where I'm not as interested in dipping down there. Like we talked about last week with 3 rounds. McNeely did really well for us, but this is a week where it's with his, we'll say, as good as the 9K and 8K is. Even the upper 7K is reasonably well. It's more of a balanced build setup for me.
Yeah, I agree. I'll be there with you.
All right, man. Well, I think that'll pretty much do it this week. We able to recap or kind of preview this week fairly quick. And you have any final thoughts for the listeners? Obviously, we'll be back for the live stream Wednesday night, and you can check that at twitch.tv/redkachik. And looking forward. I mean, it was a pretty big week last week. Obviously, quick shout out because I forgot at the top of the show, but Crack Drafter, I think he took 1,500, finished like top 15 in the $44 Club Twirl, sweating out a top 3 there for a while. I think he might have touched the lead at some point on Sunday, but that would have been a nice 50K pocket for him. And yeah, overall, I think pretty good for cash for the Fantasy Golf Bag team. A lot of cash lineups that obviously swept their head-to-heads, and we have Euro this week on deck, so pretty fun week again.
Yeah, I mean, we've been running pretty pure in Showdown, so I'd like to keep that going as well. So, and that'll be interesting because you do have just really quick, you have that course split. So, and we know North is easier. So, some books also threw out first round leaders last year. I was able to hit, it was either last year or year before it, hit Rahm at like 18-1 or something silly they gave me. So, just be sure to look into that as well. Just check it all because some books will toss out first round leader, and obviously you have Showdown to take advantage of all the guys who will be playing the big names on the South and not realizing the advantage. So,
all right, perfect. All right, guys. Well, we appreciate you, as always, tuning into the Fantasy Golf Bag podcast. If you can, as always, leave us a rating and a review on iTunes. Always helps us out. You can find us on Twitter at Fantasy Golf Bag. I am at Red Kachik and Axis at Fantasy Jesus DFS. So good luck this week, guys. Appreciate you tuning in, and we will see you next week for the Waste Management Phoenix Open. See ya.